first thing we do, we have someone that is working hard to help us in Western North Carolina, ensure that our families are safe, and they have a message that they would like to share.
Person, but I am pleased to join you by video to honor your work to support our youth. Thank you, Bill and Durango, for your leadership of Youth of North Carolina. And thank you to this year's Summit co-chairs, Tracy Hayes and Jorge Redmond, for your leadership and advocacy for our children's future. Whether you're an educator, a behavioral health professional, a first responder, or a community leader, your commitment to young people is putting them on the path to success. Thank you. This year's focus on hurricane recovery could not be more timely. Hurricane Helene disrupted the lives of tens of thousands of Western North Carolinians, and for many, the losses they experienced were immense. Young people across the region are still living with the consequences of losing their home, missing school, or facing uncertainty about what comes next. Navigating uncharted territory is difficult for anyone, especially without proper support. That's why what you all are doing to support our young people is so important. I'm committed to rebuilding Western North Carolina and ensuring that kids can thrive where they're growing up. I spent a lot of time in Western North Carolina, and the grit and the determination of the people there, it's unbelievable, it's impressive. Our duty is to match their level of commitment. My administration is committed to working with focus, urgency, transparency, and accountability. Through our Renew NC housing program, we're getting families back into their homes. Last month, we announced $75 million to support child care centers impacted by the storm. We're also investing in flood resiliency and strengthening water infrastructure so that students' homes and schools are safer from the next storm. And we're continuing to support small businesses and recruit new companies so that folks don't have to leave their hometown to get a job or start a career. As we keep at these rebuilding efforts, we need the federal government to be a reliable partner. And while we're grateful for every federal dollar we've received, we have an additional $13.5 billion request that awaits federal government's attention. In February, I traveled to Washington, D.C., and I urged the president and his cabinet directly to support this request so they know that North Carolina cannot be forgotten. I look forward to working with the White House and Congress to get this work done. We all have a role to play in supporting our communities, whether it's rebuilding after a natural disaster or picking up the pieces when life gets stormy. So I want to thank each of you for the work that you do every day to help young people. When we rebuild, when we strengthen communities, we help our youth have hope. Your work sustains your communities during moments of crisis and every day. And I am committed to partnering with you all in the months and years ahead, God willing, to build a safer, stronger, and more resilient North Carolina for our children. Thank you.
All right, we appreciate that message. Right now, I'd like to introduce the Daniel Boone Council of Scout of America, featuring Scout Caleb Walker.
In the audience, please rise. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor our post the colors. Two. Hello, my name
Thank you all for that. So, this next part is very important to me because I get to introduce to you all our fearless leader, director of the North Carolina. A lot of work is put into putting these summits together, and it takes someone with a lot of dedication and a lot of passion and someone with a lot of love in their heart to pull this off. And it's everyone you've had has been a total success. And so please allow me to introduce you to Royce Allegretto.
Wow, it is great to be here in Asheville. The first time I came to Asheville was to take my kids and my family to guess where? Fillmore State. And I've been coming back many times since then. This is a great opportunity. That's exciting. You know, I don't know why we don't have more people sitting right here in the front row. There never is. They never like doing that. I don't know why. But what a great group. Listen, we have a wonderful program for you. Some great presenters. Dr. Lexi Lane. Emma Rush here from South Carolina to talk to us about keeping our kids safe, because video and media technology has gotten rough out there, right? Too bad. Every day I get 10 texts people wanting to buy my house for some reason. I don't know why. It is going to be a fantastic show. And you know, we couldn't do it alone. It takes sponsors to help us do this. Without sponsors, there wouldn't be a program. So let's just take a look at the screen and recognize some of our sponsors. Lonnie and Carol Poole Family Foundation, and Via Health, which is headquartered right here. As a matter of fact, we're going to introduce you to Tracy Hayes, who's the CEO and president of Via Health. She's here with us today. And Jorge Redmond will be coming up in just a moment and saying a few words. Isn't this great? It's good. It's exciting. So let's go ahead and clap one time if we're excited about that. Come on, we can be quiet for that. It's going to be a great day. Youth of North Carolina was founded by Bill and Dory Goebel in 2017. They took a lifelong passion of working with youth and turned it into a mission-driven organization. And to date, we have served 350,000 youth throughout North Carolina. Let's give that a round of applause. So at this time, I would like to introduce Bill and Dory Goebel.
I need glasses, I have to read an introduction. I'm Dory, my husband Bill. It says like it's not in my face, please. I can't see. Thank you all for being here. We really greatly appreciate you coming. I am going to introduce our co-chairs and ask them to come to the stage. So I told I had to bring something. Sorry. It's been a morning already, y'all. I'm going to need some Dr. Lexi breathing. Our co-sponsors, who we're very, very honored to have, George Redmond and Tracy Hayes, if they would please join us on stage. We have a little something of appreciation for them. These are some beautiful Youth of North Carolina things made by kids making it out of Wilmington, North Carolina. They take high school youth and they make these amazing wood things, and they learn to build houses, and it is the coolest thing I have bought. If you're ever in Wilmington, you need to buy, or you need to find kids making it and go. I've bought Christmas decorations there, Christmas gifts there. We've gotten these things there. It is way cool. And if you can wrangle a tour, it's even cooler. So thank you so much, Tracy and George, for co-chairing today's event. We greatly, greatly appreciate it, and we're thrilled to be here in Western North Carolina.
I'm gonna find Pete the mic. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I just want to thank y'all for being here. This is so dear to me. This is my home, born and raised here in Asheville. I currently work as the attorney for the sheriff here in Buncombe County, but more importantly, I'm the chair of the Juvenile Crime Prevention Council. So this summit is perfect timing for what we're going through right now. I appreciate everybody who's in attendance, all the speakers. It's going to be a wonderful summit. Thank y'all for being here.
Good morning, everybody. Can y'all hear me? Okay. My name is Tracy Hayes. I'm the Area Director and Chief Executive Officer at VIA Health. How many of you know what VIA Health is? Raise your hand if you don't know what VIA is. Quite a few. And so VIA Health is actually, we have been around for over 50 years. We started as what was known as an area program back in the late 60s, early 70s. And really, we operated as a community mental health center for decades under actually President John F. Kennedy's Community Mental Health Centers Act. Back in about 2001, the North Carolina General Assembly decided they wanted us to do something different. We are all little local units of government, so I'm actually the CEO of a government agency, which is kind of a weird thing. And they asked us to kind of change what we do, and we now manage care across 32 counties in North Carolina, including all of the western counties. And so I am not a native of Asheville. I have lived here for almost 15 years. I actually came here though, y'all will laugh, but I moved to North Carolina after Hurricane Katrina. I lived in New Orleans when Hurricane Katrina hit, and so I have the dubious honor of having lived in New Orleans and in Asheville when both these terrible storms hit. And my team prepared me some wonderful remarks, and I should probably read them. But just wanted to say how much we appreciate the work of James and his team and bringing together this amazing summit. I will share with all of you, I had a childhood that many of you will probably resonate with, or some of you will in the work that you do. My father had a serious substance use disorder my entire life. And at one point it led him to rob a bank at gunpoint. And he went to prison for several years, which was kind of a challenging thing when you're a child visiting your father in prison. And so I know firsthand what it is like as a child to experience traumatic events. And I was very lucky. I had someone in my life, my grandmother, who was a woman of great faith and who believed in me and supported me. And we know that when children have that one person in their life, they can overcome trauma. And I know that many of you serve as that one person, that therapist, that friend, that mentor, that teacher who is helping a child. And I want to thank all of you today for your work in doing that. At VIA, we recognize every day how early experiences shape health and well-being. Our work at VIA focuses on the whole person. We want to connect individuals with their needs related to physical health, mental health, substance use disorders, intellectual and developmental disabilities, traumatic brain injury. We want them to live the best life that they can. We recognize something fundamental. When we help individuals and organizations understand and respond to trauma, especially early in life, we change trajectories. We strengthen families, we improve health outcomes, and we build safer, more resilient communities for generations to come. And that is why gatherings like today matter. This summit brings together leaders, educators, providers, and advocates who are committed to working collaboratively because no single system can do this alone. Thank you so much for the work you're doing to build stronger, more resilient communities in North Carolina and for North Carolina's children and youth. I hope today inspires all of you. Thank you so much for having us.
So we're about to have Royce Allegretto come up and introduce our keynote speaker, but really quickly, I just want to let you know how this goes. So after the keynote speaker, which we're really excited about, we're going to have our breakout sessions. So you're going to get to choose from 3, 4 different places. You can stay here and hear the message here, or there's 4 that you can look on your program and read the title, and whatever pulls to you, that's where you want to go. You'll have a little break in between, use the restroom, grab some more coffee or whatnot, but we want to make sure we get into those rooms on time so we can stay on schedule, okay?
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. My name is Royce Allegretto. I'm a senior in high school who will probably be starting college this fall as a communications major. And I'm also an Eagle Scout, earning Scouting's highest rank just over a year ago. In Scouting, I've been pushed, supported, and inspired by incredible people. At a time when many young people are turning into couch potatoes, and too often, much worse. My generation doesn't need more entertainment. We need more engagement. We need adults who remind us that meaning still lives in doing something. And that's why I'm so thrilled to be introducing our keynote speaker today. In Scouting, I've earned 60 merit badges. I've earned the Religious Emblem, the Jimmy Stewart Good Citizenship Award, the International Spirit Award, and the Historic Trails Award. I've hiked about 150 miles, performed over 200 hours of community service, and have camped over 100 nights. But nothing I've done compares to our guest today. Jennifer Pharr Davis knows what it takes to keep going. As a hiker, she's covered over 14,000 miles and explored trails in 6 different continents and in all 50 states. Jennifer has hiked the Appalachian Trail 3 separate times. And in 2011, she set the record on this 2,190-mile path by completing it in 46 days. That's an average of 47 miles per day. I'm just tired thinking about that. And as a mom of 2 children, Jennifer has yet to slow down. She's backpacked 700 miles in her 2nd and 3rd trimester, hiked across the state of North Carolina while nursing her son, and has set foot on a trail in all 50 states with her daughter. Off trail, Jennifer is an entrepreneur, speaker, and author who sold her thriving hiking company in 2022 to complete a graduate program in public policy. I'm so excited to welcome someone who has served on the President's Council on Sports, Fitness, and Nutrition, and who has been recognized as National Geographic's Adventurer of the Year. Let's give a warm greeting to Jennifer Pharr Davis.
and they are pandemic kids. They were both out of school for almost an entire year due to COVID-19. They are also Helene kids. They were out of school again for over a month. They had friends who moved and were displaced. They had afternoon activities that were washed away. They had friends who lost friends. And now, our family is also dealing with a recent cancer diagnosis. It's a lot. And we know it's a lot. And we talk to our kids about it. And we say, hey, this is heavy. You guys have been through a pandemic and a hurricane. And now our family faces a health crisis. And we want to support you. What can help you through this? What tools, what strategies, what support do you need? Can we set you up with a counselor? Are there activities that you know are helpful to you? How can we support you? And my 13-year-old daughter looked at me with these earnest, dewy eyes, and she goes, cash. A stack of bills would seriously help right now. And then her little brother caught on and said, ice cream. Ice cream every day. You know, kids are resilient, and they are funny, and they can take on a lot, but they need support. And most of what I have learned about resilience has come through my time outdoors. And it's funny because growing up here, I wish I had been in Scouts, and I hope you all take the time today to connect with the scouting organizations here. But growing up, I was not a hiker or a camper. I didn't backpack. I mean, Royce, you gave this beautiful introduction. You have done so much more at age 18 than most humans, and definitely than what I had done when I was in high school. But I didn't discover the outdoors until I graduated from college, and all of a sudden felt all this pressure to have the rest of my life figured out. I didn't have those answers. I didn't know where I was supposed to go or what I was supposed to do or who I really was. And honestly, I just wanted time and a place to try to figure things out. So growing up in this area, I had always heard of the Appalachian Trail. Raise your hand if you have ever been on the Appalachian Trail. Okay, a good number. When I was 21, I had never set foot on it, but I had heard that it was really long. It's about 2,200 miles long. It travels through 14 states between Georgia and Maine. And if you want to hike the entire trail all at once, how long do you think that might take on average? Hearing whispers. 6 months. There we go. Good. It's about 5 or 6 months on average to hike the entire Appalachian Trail. And in my 20-year-old brain, I thought, okay, well, sounds like an adventure. It seems pretty affordable. And hiking is technically just walking, so how hard can it be, right? Yeah. So I went home and I actually dug my brother's old Boy Scout gear out of the basement. And then I started on my own in Georgia with the goal of walking all the way to Maine. And right away, this trail kicked my butt. I had done hard things before, but the difference with backpacking the Appalachian Trail is there is a relentlessness to it. The challenges in the past, the hard things I had done, they had fit into a couple hours or a day, and the end result was usually the same, and it included a hot shower and a warm meal. But on the trail, I was going up and down mountains all day, every day, with everything I needed in a pack on my back. So I had aching shoulders, blisters on my feet. You're out there in all types of weather conditions. One of the first lessons I embraced on the trail is that you never appreciate how much it rains until you live outside. But I will never forget the sense of pride I had when I finally made it out of Georgia. Yeah, you can see on the map. It's not that far. It's about 77 miles in Georgia, but then I got to North Carolina and I hit the boundary Over 12 million guests a year will go to the Smokies. And yes, granted, a high percent is just eating pancakes in Gatlinburg, and somehow that counts as a park visit, but still, I heard that all these people were coming to the Smokies, and I thought, there has got to be something incredible to see there. So what I hoped for is what I think most people hope for if they take a hike, right? What would you want? Views. What else? Waterfalls, wildflowers, maybe in the spring, maybe wildlife at a safe distance. Yes. Well, I spent 4 days hiking through the Smokies, and I never had a single view. It was cloudy, it was misty, it was rainy, and it turns out that there is a reason they call them the Smokies. Sometimes the clouds will just stick on top of the mountains. And my last night in the park, I was cold, I was damp, and the last thing I wanted to do was try to set up my tent. And along the Appalachian Trail, they do have these very rustic, three-sided wooden shelters spaced out about every 7 or 8 miles. So I pulled up to a shelter, decided to spend the night there, and I rolled out my foam pad, got into my sleeping bag, and I remember falling asleep just listening to the sound of light rain on the shelter roof and shivering in my bag. And then the next morning I woke up, and the first thought in my head was like, yes, I don't hear rain on the shelter roof. It must have stopped. And then I looked outside, and what do you think I saw? This is very much a day like yesterday, where like 48 hours prior it had been 70 degrees, and then you wake up and there's snow on the ground. The difference is yesterday there was snow on the ground, and my kids were like, yes, another remote learning day. But in the Smokies, I woke up and there were 6 to 8 inches already on the ground. It was coming down in blizzard-like conditions. I am 18 miles from the nearest road crossing, wearing all of my warm clothes and already shivering, and I'm low on food. I don't have what I need to get stuck in the Smokies in the snowstorm. And I'll also tell you this because it's a local talk. Growing up, I do have these memories of WLOS or the local newspaper having these news stories about hikers having to get rescued out of the Smokies in a snowstorm, right? And so now I'm also thinking, my mother is going to kill me. Like, I cannot make the local news. I have got to get out of here. So I start packing up my gear, and I remember I looked where I put my shoes the night before, and the laces were covered in 2 inches of ice. So there was no way to like tie or untie my shoes. I just had to stomp my feet inside, throw on my pack, and then start hiking down the trail. Now, how do you know that you are on the trail? Yeah. Well, usually you can see it too, right? Like usually there's a dirt path on the ground. That was gone. So now I'm looking for the trail markers, which all those hands who went up for being on the Appalachian Trail at some point, what is the Appalachian Trail marked with? White. Yes. It's very well marked for over 2,000 miles with one symbol that just happens to be a 2x6-inch white rectangle. We call it a white blaze. They paint it on trees and rocks to let you know that you are headed in the correct direction. And usually it's so easy to see until what? Snow. Right. So here I am in a blizzard, looking for white markers on snow-covered trees, but at least most of the time I'm in the forest. And in the forest, the trees somewhat protect me from the wind and the snow and the sleet. And then there comes this point where I have to leave the forest to cross an exposed ridgeline. So I step out of the tree cover and immediately feel the precipitation on my face, and it hurts, it burns. And so instinctually, I duck my chin, I close my left eye, and I book it, like I hustle as fast as I can across the ridgeline to get back inside the forest. And when I make it there, I lift my chin, and something is wrong. I couldn't open my eye. It had frozen shut. Did you all know that could happen? Yes. Where are you from? You're from here? Yeah. Usually you can tell where people are from because people in like Buffalo, New York are like, that's cute. And you know, people from down south are like, what? I didn't know your eyes were pretty shut. I'm panicked. I have to throw off my mitten and then pick icicles off of my eyelashes and wipe frozen crust from the corners of my eye until I can once again lift my eyelid and regain my sight. But still, I don't know where I am. I don't know if I'm on the right trail. I'm alone. I feel lost. I'm confused. I'm stressed. I'm exhausted. I'm scared. And all I want to do in this moment is cry. And then it hits me, I probably shouldn't cry. I did just have one eye free shut. So instead, I try to pull myself together and I take a deep breath and I grab a sip of water and a bite of food, which I will never forget. It was a cinnamon and sugar Pop-Tart. And then I ask myself, who or what can help me now? Now I'll date myself, this is 2005, so I had a brick Nokia cell phone, but it sure did not have service. I did not have a GPS, but I did have a map and a compass and a guidebook. So I pulled it out and I tried to figure out where I was and where I needed to go. I made a plan, I packed up, and I headed in a certain direction where within a few minutes, I saw the corner of a blaze sticking out on a snow cover tree. So I kept going. And after a very long day with several wrong turns, I finally made it to the park boundary and there was a road and a hiker hostel and I was safe. But I will never forget that experience, partly because there have been so many times in my life it has felt like I am hiking through a blizzard with one eye frozen shut. And I have felt lost and alone and scared and exhausted and confused. And one thing that the Smokies taught me is how important it is to have a reset routine in those moments. To just take a second to take a deep breath. And then to check in on physical needs, because quite frankly, I do not care if you are a professional hiker or a 9-year-old or a mid-career professional, you will make better decisions when food and water are in your system. And even more so if you can get some rest. And then on top of that, I ask myself, who or what can help me now? And at this point in my life, I usually sit down and I just make a list, a resource inventory, and I say, who or what can help me now? And it is different in every situation or every challenge, but it is one of the first things I do that helps me to not feel as alone, and then I use those resources to make a plan. Now, on the Appalachian Trail, I got out of the Smokies, and after about 6 weeks of hiking, I finally made it up to Virginia, and finally made it out of a lot of the winter weather, and now it felt like spring. There were wildflowers. I kind of got used to the whole backpacking thing, and I started to really just embrace or enjoy the community aspect of the trail. I'll be honest with you, I've hiked a lot. I've spent over 2 years of my life walking on long trails, and eventually the hiking gets kind of old. Gets a little boring. It's very repetitive. On the Appalachian Trail, the entertainment comes through conversation, and the conversation comes through the people you meet each and every day. And I think my mother's worst fear for this adventure was the fact that her daughter for work. You meet someone on the trail, doesn't matter what they did. You are now on the same path, doing the same thing, and you both smell horrible. You do. So the boundaries just go down. And you meet all different types of people with different ages, backgrounds, and beliefs. In fact, it's pretty incredible. Do you want to guess the youngest hiker to ever complete the entire trail? 15's a good guess, but go lower. 10's a good guess, go lower. There have been actually 3 5-year-olds. 3 5-year-olds to complete the full length of the Appalachian Trail. And then, I don't know how to count this, maybe there's an asterisk beside it, but there was a mom and dad who carried their 1-year-old the entire way. There have been 3 legally blind hikers to complete it. 2 were from North Carolina. So you never know who you're going to meet out there, but I will say, if you're trying to hike the entire trail, taking 5 to 6 months off of life and away from work is a privilege. And there are usually only 2 main ages that are able to take that time away from work and that you find on the trail. 2 main age groups. I was one of them, early 20s, out of college. What's the other main age group? Retirees. So you get a lot of 20-year-olds and 60-year-olds walking together. And it's incredible because there is this exchange of energy and wisdom. I spent a lot of my miles with folks in their 60s and 70s, and they are out there looking back on their life. I'm out there trying to figure out my life. They're out there processing everything that they've done for the past 30 and 40 years, and they're doing it out loud, and they are sharing what they're most proud of. They are telling you what they would do differently, and a lot of times they're saying what their biggest regret was. And every time that happened, and every time I heard that, I thought, man, that is an education. Why didn't I hear that? Why didn't I learn that in college? There's a lot of wisdom on the trail. But I also spent plenty of time hiking with folks my own age, trying to figure it out together. And there was this one time in Virginia, and I met another hiker, a young guy around my age. And we walked and talked and had this really interesting conversation. And then at the end of the day, I wanted to head off on my own once again. So I used all the normal party methods, which typically on the trail you just say, hey, it's been nice hiking with you. See you down the trail. So I tried that, and it didn't work. And it started to come pretty clear pretty quickly that this guy, he really wanted to stick together. And he was a nice enough guy. I didn't want to hurt his feelings. I didn't want to be rude. So I decided I just needed to give him more hints or more clues about how I felt. So I remember turning to this other hiker and saying, gosh, you know what? I really like hiking by myself. And he turned to me and he goes, yeah, me too. And he kept following. So a little while later, I tried again, and this time I turned to him and said something along the lines of like, gee, I am so glad that I don't have a hiking partner. And he turned to me, and what do you think he said? Me too. And he kept following me. And he kept following me for 6 days. Yes. And unfortunately, because of the world we live in, this is where I have to stop and clarify. I never felt threatened. Thankfully. Physically, I am pretty sure I could have taken this guy. But emotionally, this was uncomfortable, this was awkward, it was parasitic, and I tried everything I could think of. Like, I went really fast. He stayed right on my heels. So then I became the most interested amateur naturalist you have ever met. I looked at every rock, every twig, every flower. He stayed right beside me. So finally, after nearly a week of this, I was fed up and frustrated. wasn't right behind me on the trail, and I thought to myself, this is it. This is my chance, and I have got to escape. So what are you going to do if you're trying to escape from someone on the Appalachian Trail? Yes, this table. Good job. Run and hide. And I'm going to show you a little what the trail looked like at this point. So I'm walking down the trail. It is a green tunnel, and I decide I've got to run and hide. So in this moment, I run off trail, downhill with my big pack still on my back, and then I get on all fours, and I army crawl underneath the rhododendron tree, which is just a big green shrub, right? So now I'm belly down in the dirt, looking up at the trail, praying that this guy's going to pass without seeing me. And all of a sudden I realize, this is the most pathetic I have ever felt in my entire life. Like, I'm out here in the dirt under a shrub trying to hide from this hiker. And why? Because here's the thing, deep down, I knew if at any point I turned to him and said, I don't want to hike with you anymore, he would have left me alone. But when I was 21, I did not have the courage, I did not have the communication skills, and I had grown up as a woman in the Southeast, which I love our region, but it had been ingrained in me that the most important thing was what? To be nice, to be polite. But now I'm underneath a rhododendron tree thinking, this does not feel nice, right? This does not feel polite, and also, this is not how I want to live my life. I don't want to hide from other people. I don't want to hide from hard conversations. And I surely don't want to hide from how I feel and what I need. So I made up my mind that I was not going to hide. And that involved very awkward, backwards army crawling out from underneath the rhododendron tree. And now there's like leaves and twigs in my hair as I hike back up to this trail. This guy comes around the corner, and we have a really hard conversation. It's uncomfortable. And it doesn't go exactly the way I want it to, but by the end, I am hiking by myself, and I have the space that I need. And I look back on that experience so often and just think of the irony, especially with this hike coming right after college, because y'all, I took communication courses in college, I did. But I never found my voice until I hiked the Appalachian Trail. Nor did I learn how to use it. And there are still times I struggle with it. Sometimes it's a hard conversation, sometimes it's an email, sometimes it's a phone call, and still to this day I will tell myself, get out from underneath the rhododendron tree, because the longer you wait to have this conversation, the harder it will become. The harder the situation, the circumstances, and the conversation will become. So stop hiding. Now I had this habit on my first Appalachian Trail hike, that every hard thing that happened, I told myself that things would get better the next state. Things would get better when that ended. And at first it was getting used to the backpacking, and then it was the cold weather, and then it was this guy following me, and then I got to Pennsylvania. Has anyone here been to Pennsylvania? It is a beautiful state, just not the part the trail goes through. Pennsylvania on the Appalachian Trail is known for its rocks. Now all of a sudden, instead of walking on a dirt path, every single step is on a sharp, jagged edge. And so your feet hurt and your neck hurts because all day you're forced to look straight down, hoping that you don't sprain your ankle. And just by the way, what animal typically loves more rocks? Snakes. Yes. So Pennsylvania was summed up by rocks and rattlesnakes. And I told myself, Pennsylvania, and then I had the hardest day on the trail, and one of the hardest days I've had in my entire life. I was hiking by myself early one morning. I came to the top of a mountain that the trail went over, and there was also a parking lot nearby. And right before I got there, something very tragic happened, and someone had driven up, gone to the top of the mountain, and taken their life. And I was the first person on the scene, and I didn't know what to do or what to think. I just remember feeling like my stomach dropped out of my body. I turned, I ran. I didn't know if what I had just seen was a murder or a suicide. I didn't know if someone was around who was going to hurt me. And at some point, after running through the forest, I stopped, pulled out my old Nokia, found a place where I had service, and I called 911. Eventually, the police, they came out, they found me. They sat down with me and asked me questions for about 15 minutes, and when the officer was done, he flipped closed his notepad, looked at me, and said, "Okay, you can keep hiking now." I know, it's weird looking back, right? It's weird thinking, okay, well maybe I should have gone to town, maybe I should have called a counselor, talked to my mother, taken a break, done a myriad of things. But in some weird way, I am grateful looking back that this person in authority told me I could keep hiking, because I was in a state of shock. I didn't know what else to do, and when I stood up and put on my pack and kept walking down the trail, here's what happened. I realized that when your emotions are stuck and angry and confused and don't feel like they are ever going to change, sometimes the most positive and hopeful thing you can do is put one foot in front of the other. Physical forward motion can help loosen up some of the tight emotional tension that we carry. And here's the other thing I will say. I was in a state of shock and trauma and grief. And so often in my life when I face those feelings, it feels claustrophobic. The forest and the trail is the only place where I've ever experienced those emotions that felt big enough to hold it. Didn't try to fix it, didn't try to change it. It just allowed me the space and time to breathe. So I learned the power of forward motion. I found a place where it was okay to grieve. And the third part of this is when other hikers heard what had happened, they rushed to my side. I had hikers who hitched ahead and just skipped a section of trail to come check on me. I had hikers ahead of me who heard what had happened, and they turned around and walked towards me. That is something you do not do when every single footstep is supposed to be taking you closer to Maine. And then I found these hikers, this community who had sought me out, and they offered me their food, which seems like a small thing, but when you have planned every snack and every meal, and someone gives you a Snickers bar, it's a big deal. And then they said, let us know what you need. If you want us to walk with you all the way to Maine, we will. But they had heard about that guy in Virginia, so they're like, but if you need space, we'll give you space. We're not stopping you. It's not like that. And it was the community support that gave me the courage to keep going. And so I continued. But this mindset of hoping and expecting it to get better did not change. In fact, now I was like, I have hiked such a harder trail than these other hikers I know around me. I have been through so much more than they have, and now this trail owes me. It does. It owes me a red carpet and wild roses all the way to the end. And then I got black flies. Okay, let me explain. Down here we have mosquitoes. They're really not that bad, right? You can swat them, they can get a couple bites. But up in New England, they have this insect called a black fly, which is smaller than a mosquito. And they're like tiny, biting vampires. So they are. And when they bite, they draw blood, right? And they don't travel independently. They travel in clouds or swarms. So I remember up until Massachusetts, start sweating it off, and the black flies would get closer and closer and closer. And I remember now I'm up in Vermont, and I'm surrounded by black flies, and I am miserable, and it's hot, and it's humid, and no one's following me. I'm by myself, but I have had it. I've just had it. This whole entire trail, I've heard that the 2 hardest days are Maine and New Hampshire. That's all I have left. And I don't need any extra food, but I come to a road crossing, and I know I have just I've got to have a break. I've got to get off this trail. And so I hitched into a nearby town, and I had never visited New England until I walked there. And I was talking to someone this morning from Connecticut. We were saying how idyllic and quintessential it is, how charming it is. It's so true. But what no one had told me as a hiker is that you will not be able to afford anything in these quintessential idyllic New England towns. And so I got to this really cute town, and I just got another ride down the road. There was nothing there for a hiker, but a few miles farther, there was an old motel. And I checked in, and honestly at that point, half of me thought that I might go back to the trail the next morning, and half of me thought I was going to get a bus and go home. I just had to make that decision. But first, a shower, right? Checked in, took a long hot shower. One of the best things about hiking is it builds up this sense of gratitude to where every time hot water comes out of a spigot in the wall, it feels like a miracle. It does. So I had that shower, but now it was like 3 o'clock. There's nothing around this motel. There's nothing to do. So I just sit on this kind of plastic bedspread, and I turn on the TV. There are a couple channels, not much going on. And finally, and yes, this dates me as well, but finally I landed on MTV. And I ended up watching the MTV Music Awards on rerun for 6 hours. And when I turned off the TV, I knew I was going back to the trail the next day. And I don't think I had this big breakthrough moment, and I'm definitely not trying to knock pop culture, but it just occurred to me while I was binging this awards show that everything I saw felt fake. It was just so synthetic, it was so produced, it was so image-driven. And again, I'm not saying it's bad, I'm just telling you, it was such a contrast to everything I had lived for the past 4.5 months. I mean, I had had highs, I had had lows, but oh my gosh, every moment had felt real. And I just knew in that place that I wanted to be in a space that felt real. And so the next morning, I went back to the trail, and for the first time on this entire journey, I didn't expect it to get easier, better, or more fun. I knew it was going to be hard. And when I finally accepted that challenge, were the last 2 stays the hardest? Yes. As far as terrain and how technical it was and what it demanded of my body, but once I had the right mindset for it, it was better. I won't say it was easier, but it was less difficult. And I had more fun. And after 5 months, when I finally got to the end, I was a different person. And I accepted. It took me way too long. But I finally accepted by the end that people don't do it for fun. Are there moments of fun? Yes, but if you want fun, go to Disney World. Really, do it. If you want a challenge and you want to change, you want to transform, then hike the Appalachian. When I got to the end, my values were different. I valued simplicity. I valued quality relationships with people who were completely different from me. Before I started, I was terrified of a lot of the bears, the snakes, the cold and the wet, the silence and the solitude. When I got to the end, seeing some of the wildlife and the natural habitat had been a highlight of the trip. And one of the things I valued the tell it's a very forested trail. They call it a green tunnel. But Road Mountain is one place where you get there, and all of a sudden you have a 360-degree view on the ridge lines. And I happened to be there by myself as the sun was going down, and the mountains were changing colors, and the sky was changing colors, and you could hear the birds, and you could feel the breeze, and the slopes down below were filled with spruce and fir trees, and all that means is that this moment smelled like Christmas. I mean, it was the best, fullest, most beautiful moment that I had ever experienced, and then it hit me that I was a part of it, and that I was a part of nature. And at first I was like, oh, no, I don't think so, because nature's cool, nature's beautiful, but it's out there, it's over there, it's out the window. Like, we are not a part of it. But then there's way too much time and space to think on the trail, so I started to think through it and ask myself, okay, biologically, scientifically speaking, am I a part of nature? Are we a part of nature? What do you think? Biologically? Yeah, okay. For me, that checked out. So then the next thing I did is I ran it through my spiritual lens. And that checked out. And then for the first time in my life, I accepted, or I believed that I was a part of nature. And I will never forget what happened next, because the first thing I felt was I felt you. And I am not talking about a cultural beauty. I'm not talking about billboards or magazines. I'm talking about something so much deeper and so much better, because I was looking out at the most beautiful thing I had ever seen, and I knew I was a part of it, and it made me feel beautiful in a way that I wish I had felt at 16. In a way I hope my daughter and my son feel someday. And on top of that, I felt wild. Like, wild. That was a growl, in case you couldn't tell me. It feels really good to growl. But seriously, like, we are such indoor sedentary critters nowadays, and to remember that some part of you is wild. It's way better than just wearing the cheetah print. Like, for me, what that meant is I could do more, I could be more, I could pivot, and I could find my own path, because I was wild. And then on top of that, maybe biggest of all, in this moment, I felt responsible. Because I recognized that if I was a part of nature, then all of my actions have ripples. And what happens to my neighbor impacts me, and what happens to my environment impacts me. I felt more connected and more responsible than ever before. And for me, it was in nature, but for everyone to have that sense at some point, to feel connected to community and to beauty, to feel empowered, and to know that their actions matter, that is a moment I hope for everyone in our community. Because I know it changed my life, and it has impacted every decision I've made since then. Which we have one more story left to share, but we've covered a lot of ground. Are y'all tired? Are you hungry? We just hiked like 2,000 miles. Does this make sense? I'll leave space for like 2 to 3 questions now, and then end with one final story. Does anyone have anything they want to ask? Yeah? How did I get back? It's a good story. So my parents are still married, but they were very opposed in their support or non-support of this adventure. My dad thought it was really cool. My mom thought it was the worst idea I had ever had. And it was my dad who dropped me off in Georgia to start the trail. And when he dropped me off, he said, I'll pick you up, but I'm only going to pick you up if you make it to Maine. So I knew if I got to the end, I would have a ride, and when I made it to the last mountain, my dad and my brother were waiting there for me. Good question. more questions. Yes?
How did you learn to prepare, I guess, your meals, your snacks, your water?
So the Appalachian Trail takes a lot of preparation, and I did take a course beforehand, a 4-day preparation course to learn how to pack and prepare. But really the way you want to look at this 2,000-mile trail is in a 3-day backpacking trip, followed by a 5-day backpacking trip, followed by a 4-day backpacking trip, followed by a 6-day backpacking trip, because you're splitting it up in between resupply points, right? And also because thinking about 2,000 miles is just overwhelming and seemingly impossible. But you think, well, maybe I can hike 60 miles to the next town. So what you do is you pack your gear and food and supplies for that stretch. And then the Appalachian Trail does go directly through some small towns like Hot Springs, North Carolina, or it'll come across roads like Highway 64, where you can hitchhike into Franklin, North Carolina. So all along the way, there are points where you can resupply, get more food and provision, and then keep going. So that's how you break down and resupply yourself for a 2,000-mile journey. Okay? I'm actually going to use that question and segue because it's the perfect lead-in. If you want to do the trail in a shorter amount of time, if you want to hike farther and faster every day, what do you think you need to do? Work out. What's your biggest burden when you're backpacking? The weight you carry on your shoulders, on your hips. If you want to go farther, if you want to go faster, what do you need to do with that weight? Lighten it and share it. Okay? So I'm going to tell you real quickly about going back to the Appalachian Trail for the 3rd time. This time it was very different. I wasn't out there for 5 or 6 months. I was out there trying to set the overall record for men and women. And everyone thought that was impossible because no woman had ever set the overall mark. What does that have to do with supporting youth in our community? If you want people to overcome overwhelming odds, they have to have support. And when I went back to try for the record, instead of carrying all my weight, I was meeting my husband at road crossings. And he had our car and supplies and provisions, and so I could take just what I needed for the next stretch of trail. So part of the support was logistical, meeting immediate physical needs, but part of it was emotional, and that was the biggest part. You know, I got out there, and right away I was starting with these 45, 50-mile days, and I knew it would be hard, but then it was more intense because on day 3 I developed shin splints. On day 10 I went through a sleet storm and dealt with hypothermia, and then on day 12, because of it, on top of it, I don't know, I got really sick. And so now, instead of walking down the trail, I am running off the trail into the bushes, becoming depleted and dehydrated. I'm barely going a mile per hour, and I am already over a day behind record pace. So when I finally stumble out to that next road crossing, I have tears streaming down my face, and my husband is there waiting for me, and as soon as I see him, I look up and I go, we are done. Not you and me, he knew that, but we are done with the trail, and we are done with this record, and all I want to do is go home. And he took a moment, and he was quiet, and he brought me, I think I have a picture. He brought a chocolate chip cookie and put it on my belly. You see that? Some chocolate milk beside me. And he let me just be in that emotion for a couple minutes. And then when he finally spoke up, here's what he said. He said, if you really want to quit, that's fine. But, he said, you just can't quit right now, because right now you feel way too bad to make a good decision. So he said, you've got to eat, you've got to drink, you've got to take medicine, and just keep going a little bit more. Just keep going until tomorrow. And tomorrow, if you want to quit, I'll take you home. So he said that, he handed me my new pack, and then he drove off. It's very hard to quit without a ride, right? Uber does not service Forest Service Road 56 or whatever it was, right? So I did in this place with time and space to think, and I start to ask myself, why am I really out here? And before that moment, I think I was distracted by the record, by the desire to be the best. But in this place of just raw emotion, it hit me that really it was not the most important thing to be the best. But it was deeply personal and important to me to find my best. So even if the record was long gone, as long as I could put one foot in front of the other, I decided I was going to stay out there to see what I could do. And the next day we kept going and we let go. We loosened this grip on the record, and as soon as we did, I realized how impressive it had been, because up until that moment, all I was doing was comparing myself to other people and fixating on numbers that I wasn't meeting. And every day I felt like I was failing and falling farther behind as soon as I woke up. And then I released that, and I started to wake up and ask myself each morning, how far can I go today? That was it. It was just one simple question. How far can I go today? And when that psychological shift took place, what do you think happened to my miles? Increase. What do you think happened to my enjoyment? Increase. What do you think happened to my shin splints? Oh, they hurt. Yes, girl. You got it. You got it. Those shin splints stayed for 1,000 miles. They were with me when I walked into Virginia. But from that point forward, it was a different trail for me. And I was able to manage the pain differently and better because it was my path. It wasn't someone else's. And we made up time and we made up miles. And 46 days after we started, my husband and I hiked the last mountain hand in hand. We touched the sign that marks the end, and as soon as we did, I turned to him. And I have the ugliest finishing photos because I'm laughing, I'm crying, I'm smiling. It's all the emotions coming out at once. I haven't showered in 10 days, but I remember I just turned to my husband with all the love in my heart. And he turned to me and he goes, we are never, never doing that again. And I knew there would never be a need or desire for me to hike a trail again in this way because I had found what I was looking for. I knew what it felt like to give my best. And it just so happens that my best, our best, was good enough to set the overall record. So for 46 days, I averaged 47 miles per day. And I became the first woman to set an overall record on one of these long distance trails in North America, but not the last. More and more women are setting overall records on long distance trails, and in fact, my record has since fallen, but a woman from North Carolina once again holds the title. It turns out women are really good at chronic pain. Yes. All right, but here's where I'm going to wrap it up and send you all off, because the thing is, I came down that mountain and back to life, and back to work, and community, and starting a family. And there are days physically, I don't think I could hike 47 miles a day anymore, but emotionally I think it's easier sometimes. And I know on my life, and when I look at my kids and how I try to love and support them, and also in owning and operating an outfitter and guide service for 15 years and supporting adults and youth in the woods, so many of the things that I learned on the trail have helped me help other people on their unique paths. Very few people in here are going to be long-distance hikers, but I promise you, all of us at some point will feel like we are hiking through a blizzard with one eye frozen shut, and you will help people who feel the same way. Learn and share reset routines to rebalance. Make a list of resources so you can make a plan and make good decisions. Find your voice and use it to protect yourself and create boundaries and encourage the people you serve to do do the same. We will all face crisis. We will all face trauma. Have the courage to put one foot in front of the other, literally and physically, if you cannot yet do it emotionally. And don't forget to go out to big places that can hold your grief and that do not try to fix it. It will be hard. It is hard. The sooner you accept that, probably the more enjoyable it will be. We are all connected. You are beautiful. You are. You are wild. And you are responsible. And when, not if, but when you feel too bad to make a good decision and you want to quit, or you're coaching someone who does, remember to encourage them not to quit on a bad day. Sometimes stopping, listen to this from an endurance athlete, sometimes stopping is 100% the right choice and the right decision, but there is a difference between stopping and quitting. And don't quit when you feel too bad to make a good decision, because we need you. The youth in our community need you. The children in this state need you. And the work that you are doing is too important to quit now. So thank you, and keep going.
Hopefully you have decided where you're going to go. Informed care aspect of what to do if you come across a victim, right, or a survivor. And I use those words interchangeably because the one thing that I want to promote is self-determination or autonomy with children or adults who have been victims or survivors of this. They may think that they are a survivor, right? They may think that they are a victim. They may not want you to call them a survivor. They might not want you to call them a victim, right? So honor that self-determination. But we're going to go over lots of different things. So I'm curious as to who is in the audience. Do we have any social workers? Happy National Social Worker Month. Fellow social workers. Do we have any teachers or educators? Hello. Okay. Law enforcement? And then what other demographics do we have? Yes.
Community health workers.
Ooh, love it. Okay, community health. Crime rate, larger land mass, higher populations, those have multiple, right? So that would be states like California, New York, Texas, Florida, Virginia, and Illinois. Virginia, not necessarily land mass or population, but that's where our national hub is for IPAC. So IPAC stands for Internet Crimes Against Children. I'll use that term a lot throughout this presentation, so just kind of keep that in the back of your head. Now, in North Carolina, I got this page from y'all's IPAC commander. Y'all are operated through different organizations around the country. In South Carolina, we're operated through the South Carolina Attorney General's office. That's where I work. But y'all's is operated through your state law enforcement division. I think it's NCIS, right through investigation. This is kind of a breakdown of the 2023 cyber tips that y'all got. We're going to go over what cyber tips are, but as you can see, I like to start off this presentation by saying it is every app out there that has had a cyber tip, and it is also does not mean that every app is bad, okay? They're neutral, I like to say. But we have reports from every single one of them of an internet crime happening against a child. So that doesn't mean that one app is safe, right? Or one app is less problematic than others. We need to have conversations with our kids about what apps they're on and what they're doing on those apps, regardless of whether or not you think they're safe, right? So you might think that Roblox is safe because it's for kids specifically.
Not necessarily. We have adults on there all the time pretending to be kids. How many of y'all are millennials? A couple of us, okay. What's the next one? Gen X? Gen Y? Gen Z, there we go. Okay, a couple. How many of you lied about your age to get on social media? Yeah, I definitely did. I knew that I put in my birthday and it told me that I was too young to have social media. This was back when like MySpace and Facebook were popular. And so I knew my oldest sister was old enough to have MySpace. So I just put in her birthday, right? So I lied. So just like we lie to be older to get on social media platforms, adults can lie to be younger to look like kids on social media platforms too, right? Okay. So I tell that to kids all the time, and they're always like, what? What did you think was happening? Of course they're lying about their age. They're lying about all kinds of things, right? So this is kind of a breakdown of y'all's legal overview. I am not an attorney. I'm a social worker. Okay. I'm not to downplay social workers, but I am not an attorney. There is, however, an attorney in the crowd. So if you have questions about these laws, let them know. But there's kind of a breakdown of what all of these look like. Is solicitation of a minor, right, by computer. So if an adult solicits a minor for any kind of sexual encounter, that would fall under this statute, I believe. Taking incidental liberties with a minor, that is our version of criminal sexual conduct, basically, with a minor, right? Or so they solicit a minor online, they meet up in person, they have some type of sexual interaction, and then maybe they take a picture of it. That would be sexual exploitation of a minor first. Manufacturing child sexual abuse material, or formerly known as child pornography. We don't call it child pornography anymore because there's this connotation of consent. When you think of pornography, you think of two adults consenting to participate in a sexual encounter for a camera and post it online or amongst friends or whatever. Children legally cannot consent to that, so we like to call it what it is, child sexual abuse material. Now, if somebody simply distributes this, so uploads it to TikTok or Facebook or Instagram, that is just a distribution of child sexual abuse material. And then you've got possession. So if somebody downloads it from the internet and has it in their possession on their device, that would be possession. And then you've got obscene visual representation, yes. And then you've got sexual extortion. In really the nation, we call this sextortion, which we'll go over a little bit later. But this means that somebody is blackmailing a child for or with their imagery. And I guess it could be an adult too, at least in South Carolina, our statute includes adults. And this could be, hey, I know that you were at that party last Friday night, and you don't send me a nude image, I'm gonna get you in trouble. Or it could also be, hey, I have that nude image of you, if you don't have a sexual encounter with me, I'm gonna share your nudes all over the internet, right? That is sextortion. And then you've got disseminating harmful material to a minor. So, a lot of times when I present to high schoolers especially, they'll joke that they've had like a sketchy 50-year-old Bob, no offense if you're 50 and named Bob, slide into their DMs and send them an unsolicited picture. That is illegal, right? They cannot do that to a minor. So just kind of an overview of what the legalities look like, and so you know that if a kid jokingly says, hey, 50-year-old Bob slid into my DMs and sent me that picture, you know, okay, well that's a reportable offense, let's get law enforcement involved if you would like. Don't just block or report them, there's actually a crime being committed against you, and that's traumatic, right? You didn't ask to see that, you didn't consent to see that, so let's talk about it. Now, all of our reports come through, most of our reports come through the Cyber Tip Line. This is operated through the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, or NCMEC. I would highly recommend taking a picture of this slide. This is probably the most important slide you'll see all day. This is where we get reports of all of those legalities we talked about earlier, right? So if a child is experiencing a crime occurring against them on the internet, this is where that report needs to go if you don't know where the perpetrator lives. If you know that it is cousin Jenny down the street or the weird sex offender that you know lives in 204B, go ahead and go to local law enforcement, right? But if you don't know who the perpetrator is, which occurs a lot on the internet, this is where you need to report it to. You can go to local law enforcement as well, but this is going to help triage and get it to the right place, right? So to give you an idea of how this works, we have participating internet service providers and electronic service providers who monitor their content on their platforms. So you've got Twitter, you've got Meta, you've got Google and Bing and all of these other platforms that monitor what is being uploaded and downloaded from their servers. And if it is a known image or a potential image of child sexual abuse material, they are by law required to send it to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children's STIP line. They figure out where the bad guy lives based on IP addresses and blah, blah. And then they send it to that local task force. So in South Carolina, it comes to our office. In North Carolina, it goes to the Bureau of Investigations, right? And so they triage those tips based on whether or not there's a live victim, and then they send it out to local affiliates to investigate. Take It Down is a service operated through the National Center as well, where if a child's image is on a platform, you can actually take the hash value of that image, and there's not going to be a quiz, you don't have to remember all this. It's all on their website as how to do it, but just kind of explaining the background of it. You take the hash value from that image or video, which is kind of like a unique fingerprint that every image or video has, and then they will monitor or look through their servers to see if it's posted there, and they will effectively take it off their platforms, right? Unfortunately, to change a hash value, all you have to do is screenshot a picture. You can crop it, you can add a dot to it, a smiley face, you can put a filter over it, and it's a whole new hash value. So it's still developing, right? It's not perfect yet, but this is a huge step in the right direction to having child sexual abuse material taken down. So if you ever run into a kid who has their nude images on Facebook, right, or being sex forwarded and it's out there, there is a way that they can have those images taken off the internet now, which is really great. This is kind of a breakdown of those cyber tip line reports nationally for the year of 2024. 2025 data hasn't come out yet, but as you can see, 19, almost 20,000 million reports for the year. That actually went down from the year prior. Does anybody want to take a guess as to maybe why that number went down? So Facebook, or Meta, did something that was controversial, and they took their messenger platform and made it end-to-end encrypted. So they are no longer monitoring what is happening on Messenger. So that accounted for a couple million reports right there, right? Otherwise, there's probably some other reasons why, but that was a big contender or a big thought, right, in the industry as to why the numbers went down so much. But that's all very reactive, right? Something bad has happened to a child, and now they need counseling, they need support, they need whatever they need, right? But y'all are here because you want to be proactive. You don't want those bad things to happen to kids, or you at least want to know what to do when they do happen. So prevention can look like a lot of different things. It doesn't just have to be an internet safety presentation, which is probably what you're thinking of. That is a great start, right? But those prevention conversations can look like talking about privacy, right? What you're putting online and how that could impact your future. My parents, love them to death, they are baby boomers, and my mom loves to post pictures of her house on the internet all the time. And she especially loves to do this when they're on vacation. And to say, hey, we're out of the country or we're on vacation. So now a bad guy can go on her Facebook, because it's public, of course, she doesn't know what privacy settings are, and she has pictures of her house that you can reverse Google image search, find our address, and they know that we're out of town, so they can easily go and break into our house if they wanted to. It doesn't do it for everybody's house, but it does do it for my childhood home, so that is kind of creepy, right? So it could be as simple as talking about privacy with a kid, also sports jerseys or school t-shirts and profile pictures. Profile pictures are inherently public. That's how people find you, right? So if you're in high school and you play basketball and that's the most professional picture that you have taken of yourself and you're posting it as your profile picture, guess what you're doing? You're telling the entire world where you go to school. And you might not think that that's a big deal, but when I was in high school, a friend of mine on my basketball team did that very thing, and a stranger that had slid into her DMs and got ignored showed up at our high school basketball game one day, followed her to her car in the parking lot, and thankfully he didn't do anything and law enforcement was called, but he definitely cornered her and asked her why, she blocked him. Very scary situation to have. Setting realistic guidelines and boundaries with kids. This is probably one of the more important things that I'll talk about. Kids have the right to put boundaries in place when social media is in question, right? They have the right to put boundaries in place in any aspect of their life. But they don't have to add their Aunt Susie on Facebook because Aunt Susie requests them to be friends, right? Maybe they don't like Aunt Susie. Maybe Aunt Susie is toxic. Maybe Aunt Susie doesn't believe what they believe, right? That's okay for you to deny that friend request. That's a boundary. It could be, hey, I'm not going to send you sexually explicit images of myself. That's a boundary, right? If you're going to send those things to me, please ask first. That's a boundary. So giving kids the autonomy and the self-advocacy to advocate for those things is really important. But also as parents, setting realistic guidelines and expectations too. I once had a parent tell me that they allowed their child 30 minutes of online time after school. And this was post-COVID, right? And that included homework time. Not a realistic guideline or boundary, right? They need more time than that just to do their homework, but it doesn't include all the really good things that come with social media and the internet, like socialization and community building and artistic expression, right? None of that was able to happen in those 30 minutes. Talking about your online footprint and what that leaves behind, especially with high schoolers, we like to call this an online resume. Start using it to your advantage. Post things that will help you in the future, not just avoiding things that will harm you. The dangers of talking to strangers online and the red flags, we're going to get into that in a little bit. But then talking about consent and healthy boundaries, kind of going back to what I was talking about earlier. Consent with kids doesn't have to be a conversation about sex, right? It can be a conversation about bodily autonomy. Those are two very different things. I talk to my 2-year-old niece about consent all the time, right? Because I ask her, can I give you a hug goodbye? She knows yes and no. If she tells me no, I don't give her a hug. That tells her that I'm a trusted adult and that I'm not going to force my body upon her, right? And that doesn't have to be a controversial topic. It can be a very easy thing to instill in kids, bodily autonomy. And then last but definitely not least, it's not always stranger danger. We actually have a prevention curriculum that I've started with the Online Child Exploitation Prevention Initiative about prevention curriculums. And when we think about stranger danger, that initiative didn't work, unfortunately. It was very well intended, but it put blinders on all of society to the people who had actual access to kids. We know based on the Rape, Abuse, Incest National Network or the National Rape, Abuse, Incest National Hotline that 93 to 95% in any given year of hands-on offenses towards kids is done by somebody that they know in real life. So it's not always stranger danger, though there is a stranger danger element to the internet for sure. That prevention initiative put blinders on us to the people who had actual access to us. It wasn't necessarily the sketchy white van in the alleyway or the creepy guy that you ran into on the street that was going to have a hands-on offense. It was your pastor, your neighbor, your parent, your cousin, your brother, your whoever, right, who had actual access to you. So if you want to know more about how to start your own prevention curriculum, this has been research proven. There's 10 best practices, and we have copies of them at our table over there. So if you want to do an internet safety prevention curriculum in your communities, this is a great place to start. We would also be happy to help you walk through what that might look like. Knowing the apps is important. I'm going to go through these really quickly, like I've been doing the rest of the presentation, unfortunately, because I've only got 50 minutes to try it. But I'm going to go through these quickly because though these are the most popular apps, this doesn't mean that these are the apps your kids are on. So having conversations with them about what apps they're on and why they like those apps is really important. So we've got picture sharing apps like Snapchat where everything automatically goes away. I put that in air quotes because even if you don't take a screenshot of it, I don't know about you, but I've got 2 phones, a tablet, 2 computers. Kids are smart. I've had kids tell me, well, to bypass the screenshot notification that it'll give if you take a screenshot, I just take a picture with my iPad on my phone. So I've got the picture that you Snapchatted me, and you don't know that I got it. Do with that information what you will. Then we've got Instagram, which is owned by Meta, right? It's kind of like Facebook in that everything that you post goes to your page or your feed, and it's considered like a microblog, but specifically for pictures and videos. Then you've got Be Real. That is another feed or microblog, but for pictures and videos. But it prompts you at a random time during the day to take a picture forward-facing and rear-facing through your camera, your phone, and post it to the world, right? So that they see exactly what you're doing when you're doing it, and you're not having this super curated, perfect, ideal content always, right? Pros and cons. I'll leave it there. Then you've got Facebook and Facebook Messenger. I don't really bring this up anymore because kids don't use it all that often, but I will say that parents love nowadays to tell their kids to get Facebook and Facebook Messenger so that they can keep up with them or post their family pictures and tag them and things like that. So it's kind of a new generation of thinking, right? Like my parents didn't want me to have social media. Now parents want their kids to have social media so that they can keep up with them. They're actively signing their kids up and actively lying about their age, their kid's age, so that their kid can have social media. They're taking those steps actively, which is kind of wild to think about. But Facebook Messenger has Messenger Kids. That's the other reason I bring it up, where you can actually create a Messenger Kids platform for your child using your Facebook profile, and you can monitor everything that they're sending and receiving, which is pretty cool. So they can give that child a taste of social media without full-fledged letting them have it. Then we've got X. X used to be Twitter. It's another microblog, but shorter form content than Facebook. Elon Musk took it over and named it X, arguably ruined it. I'm going to get got one day for saying that. But it's true. You put everything behind a paywall. You can only see a certain amount of posts per day. So it's not as popular anymore. So Meta caught on to this and then created Threads, the little app button down there. It is literally the same exact thing as Twitter. People cross-post content on there all the time. And then you've got Google and Kik. I bring these up not because they're popular or because they're traditional apps, but because I want to talk about general chatting platforms overall. If your child ever says that they met a person on Be Real, right? They hit it off, they're really good friends, and that person asks them to move the conversation to Kik, that should be a huge red flag. There is no reason why a conversation needs to be moved off of a platform with a messaging component to another one that is solely for messaging. They do this because Kik is notoriously bad at monitoring what is going on their platforms, and so they get away with a lot more. So be wary, right? Then you've got YouTube or video type content. YouTube is long form video content. And then you've got Twitch, the little quotation mark in the quote bubble. That is live streaming platform that got popular for video game live streaming, but tons of other stuff you can live stream on there as well, like getting ready, story times, whatever. Other gaming platforms, we've got Discord. That is a chatting platform, or they call them servers. The servers are for different topics or for different communities, and you can talk about pretty much anything on there. It could be for golden retriever owners. It could be for Mr. Beast lovers, right, the YouTuber. It could be for whomever, or whatever topic. And then you've got Roblox, the infamous, the one that kids love these days. That is a gaming platform for younger kids. But again, like I said earlier, just because it's for younger kids doesn't mean that adults aren't lying about their age to be on there. It has a lot more monitoring and censorship on there than most other apps. You can't talk about where you live or your phone number explicitly, but you can get around those by typing in one number at a time and hitting enter each time. So my phone number 8, enter 0, enter 3, enter, it sends us different messages. You're effectively sending somebody your phone number, right, and bypassing those monitoring programs that they have in place. So be wary of that. And then you've got TikTok. That's another video sharing platform. I'll save it for last because it's always the most popular. But it is just short form content of YouTube, basically. If anybody remembers Vine, it's the resurgence of Vine. It's the same thing. These apps are so popular and so problematic, I'll say it, for kids because of the sense of FOMO. The American Psychiatric Association and the American Academy of Pediatrics have done a lot of research on FOMO in kids, actually, or this fear of missing out, and they've come to realize that it is very real. It is not just an Urban Dictionary or slang term anymore, right? So kids are facing anxiety-like symptoms, or I'll say anxiety, based on not being involved online. Now, this is so problematic because your brain does not fully develop until women are about 22 and men are about 25. I don't make the research, I just tell it to you, so don't hold the messenger. But that doesn't take into consideration learning differences like autism spectrum disorder or ADHD. Those probably won't develop until a little later in life. Knowing this, clocked when I was able to emotionally control my sense of FOMO. It didn't happen until I was out of grad school because I'm ADHD. But you know, if you couldn't tell. So the last part of your brain to develop is the very prefrontal cortex right here, and that is where all of your emotional regulation is, where all of your consequence understanding, your futuristic planning, your emotional regulation, I already said that. That's where all of that is housed. So kids actively don't have that ability to do that like adults do. They have some ability to do it, don't get me wrong, but the way that your fully formed brain handles a situation is not the same way that a minor's brain is going to handle that same situation, right? This could lead into bullying or cyberbullying a lot of times. Bullying and cyberbullying happens when there's a power imbalance, when there's unwanted aggression, or when there's a repetition of behavior, and when there's a repetition of behavior. So if little Sally comes up to me and says, you know, my friend Susie said that she didn't like my bow today. That's a mean moment. That's not necessarily bullying. Now, if she says it every single day, that could be bullying, right? Both hurtful situations, but one holds more weight. Cyberbullying happens when bullying occurs on the internet or through an electronic device. I'm not going to play that video because of time, but it's a really great video for teens especially. It's called Sexting and Sextortion by Thorn, like a rose thorn. That is a prevention organization founded by, I believe, Ashton Kutcher, but they've since separated, I believe. But they're really good prevention curriculum organization for human trafficking and online exploitation. This is a video about cats and sending nude images, sextortion, sexting, the whole nine. So, if you want to talk to a child about this topic and you don't know where to broach the subject, this is a really great icebreaker. Yeah. Yeah. So sexting is when anybody, not just kids, sends a sexually explicit picture or content. It could be a video, it could be a voice memo, it could be a phone call, it could be a FaceTime, it could be anything, right? That is sexually explicit through an electronic device. Sextortion, like I explained earlier, is when they use that image or video or content as blackmail, or blackmail a child for that content, or person for that content, right? So it could be a child snuck out of the house and a peer is saying, well, I know you snuck out of the house, I'm going to tell your parents or the school and get you in trouble if you don't send me this nude image, right? Or it could be, well, we broke up and I have this nude image of you. If you don't continue to have sexual relations with me, I'm going to share it all over the internet. That could also be sextortion. Another big issue that we face that is increasing exponentially very quickly. And also kind of newer is this generative AI issue, right? How many of you have heard of deepfakes? Right, though that's when Gen AI started to get popular, right, when deepfakes were occurring. Now,
The last hour of the morning. Please come in and comfortable. He's been some great speakers so far. I've been impressed. I've learned a lot. I hope you all have. My name is Heather Bonner. I'm from Mission 34. We're based in Charlotte, North Carolina. Beautiful country up here. It's a pleasure driving up yesterday. We lost our son at age 20 to suicide. He was number 34 on his baseball team at Denison University. Devastating to all of us because we didn't see any signs that he was struggling. So the first thing we did was to go up to his college and talk to his teammates and his roommates and his friends to see what they saw. What was so upsetting is the people that he spent every day with, they didn't see any signs either. So they had no idea that he was struggling. So my son, Sean, is number 34 in the bottom left picture. He was 6'4", athletic, friendly. He played every sport he could when he was growing up. He probably loved basketball the most, but his true dream was to pitch on a baseball team in college. And so when he was accepted at Denison University, it was the highlight of his life. And he was so excited to start that chapter. He's with his best friends in that picture, his roommates, his college best friends, and teammates as well. They did not see the signs. So what are the signs? How do we learn the signs? So our objective, or our mission, is to eliminate the stigma around talking about your mental health and learning the signs so that you can help someone that might be in crisis. This group of people probably is very well known and educated around the statistics of mental health crisis in this country. But 50% of the worldwide, 50% of the people worldwide with mental illness do not receive care because of that stigma. In different cultures, it's very common. They do not want to discuss it at all. A couple of years before my son died, it was a black man who died by suicide, and he was an athlete, and his family did not want to discuss it, and they took him home, and it was not approached. 5 months after my son died, another Chinese woman took her life, and the same thing. They did not want to discuss it. And you have to respect that. It's their cultural belief. It's just how they live. But that stigma is so strong, it's hard to break down. When Sean died, we did the opposite. We decided we were not going to be embarrassed. We were not going to hold back on the truth. We were going to admit that something was wrong, and we didn't spot it. Neither did his friends, or his coaches, or his trainers. How can we teach these signs? How can we educate ourselves in order to serve people better and educate these children that are with each other on these sports teams who desperately need some help? So we started asking a lot of questions. And we started to learn these signs that, unbeknownst to us, Sean actually was showing some of them. Change of physical appearance. What boy doesn't go off to college and grow his hair? Grow a little facial hair. Not eat so well, maybe eat too much, gain some weight, lose some weight. He was in pretty good shape, but what happened is we believe that he experienced or sustained a concussion November of his freshman year, and nobody knew about it. We didn't find out about it until after he had passed. He didn't tell his coaches, so it went undiagnosed, untreated, and 2 years later he took his life. Now, we don't have proof that he had a concussion, but looking back, it's always 2020, and a lot of questions were kind of answered thinking that he indeed suffered from a concussion. But we think he didn't tell anybody is because he was afraid of losing his spot on the team before he even got started. And so he suffered in silence, and he started showing some of these signs, I think. So his appearance changed, definitely. Increased use of alcohol and other substances. So Sean, unfortunately, damaged his shoulder while pitching at the end of his sophomore year. And he had to have surgery right at the start of his junior year. So his normal daily life changed dramatically. He wasn't with his teammates because he wasn't practicing. He wasn't in the weight room with them. Physical therapy is up to you. Sounds like he wasn't really taking advantage of that and getting better. We believe he isolated himself. He wasn't joining in with his team. And the team goes on. They have to perform. The coaches go on. They have to perform. And slowly he became disengaged. And we believe he was suffering, that he did turn to alcohol and substance abuse in order to self-medicate, which is a very common thing to do. I'm sure you all know. Change in sleeping habits, either too much or too little. Sean had been complaining about not sleeping very well, but that was because of a headache he had. Again, little did we know he had a concussion, but he was having trouble sleeping. And his roommates confirmed after the fact that he would be up all night long. And if somebody's not sleeping, imagine, you know what it feels like to pull an all-nighter. Well, imagine if every night's an all-nighter. And you start to not think well and function well. And then he'd fall asleep in the morning, and then he would miss his classes. And he was missing practice because he was injured. And that whole day gets messed up and is not normal for him. And again, that increased isolation and the pain increased. So he's self-medicating even more. I don't think he expressed any feelings of hopelessness or helplessness. I don't believe he attempted to take his life before that one time. I do look back and realize that he was partaking in self-harm, but I didn't know what it was at the time. He had joined a fraternity, had gone through the pledging process, i.e. hazing, and I noticed that there were some marks on his leg when he came home, and I didn't really know what it was. It looked like burn marks. I assumed it had something to do with pledging, and he, passed on as if it was nothing. I look back and realize he was probably self-harming himself, either with cuts or burns on his legs. Personality changes. He did become withdrawn from us. He wasn't talking openly like himself with us. Up till college, he was very outgoing, very friendly. Everybody loved him. He'd walk into a room, he wanted to make friends with everybody. He was a true joy to be with and around. He always wanted to have a good time. The story of a hockey high schooler up in Massachusetts who lost his best friend to suicide. And then over the course of 2 years, they lost 4 others. So a total of 5 boys that were lost to suicide, and 4 of them were hockey players. And he spent the last 12 years writing this film. We showed it on Monday night and had a panel of the writer, the producer, the athletic director of Queens, Daniel Jones, who's the quarterback for the Colts, Jonathan Stewart, who's former player of NFL, or of the Panthers. We had a substance abuse counselor there, and the head football coach of Southern Mississippi. And they all sat on stage, and the coach of Southern Mississippi had also lost his son to suicide, and how he completely changed his way of coaching. So if you get buy-in from the athletes and the athletic department, it makes a huge difference. So that's our biggest barrier. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Going along with that question, have you considered like the sororities and fraternities as well, and maybe going to some other colleges and universities trying to buy in a different way or a different route?
Yes, so we have probably our biggest barriers are at Division I schools, and we found a way in through the Greek life, through fraternities and sororities, because chances are if we get buy-in from them, they already have athletes and they can go out, but that Greek life is huge. And we've brought in speakers that are, one in particular, that specializes in speaking to fraternity men, and has developed a program that we are actually going to be taking over called Life Brothers, and it's going to become part of our programming. And it's great. Yes, sir.
Yeah, when I think of this subject, I always think about younger kids, mainly starting in middle school, and how, in elementary school, they get in trouble a lot because they always make statements like they're gonna harm themselves and do this, and we're not knowing how to speak to them or talk to them about that. And we're gonna start that young, because the numbers are showing that they're just, that age group, they're starting to, be successful. I hate to say successful, but, have death by, suicide at a younger age, and they're talking about it more, they speaking out more, saying it to their parents, like, I just want to harm myself, I just want to kill myself, and everything, and we just kind of we want them to get their help, but we don't know where to go. You know what I'm saying? But we always concentrate on the older kids, and it starts at a younger age. So, do you have any advice for that?
Huge advice. The sooner we can start talking about mental health issues, the better. That's going to normalize the conversation. We've just zoomed in on a small part by reaching adults that can facilitate their own conversations. We work with an organization in Charlotte called For Students. They specialize in high schools. They're trying to back it up to middle schools. And we are trying, our kids all went to the same school, so we've been trying to get something going in the lower school. It should start in kindergarten. Obviously not the depths of suicide, but just being able to talk about your feelings and be able to communicate when somebody, you know, another child's made you feel a certain way. So the earlier the better, absolutely agree. Yes, ma'am.
I have more about a comment, thought than a question, but you know, you talk about targeting coaches and that kind of thing, which does reach all ages. I'm thinking about the success of training barbers and hairdressers in domestic violence and suicide awareness, and I wonder if there would be some sort of similar toolkit or something that would be good for coaches specifically.
Yes, so often we offer our services to bring in QPR training to coaches and administrators, because they're the ones that are seeing these kids on a daily basis, that are the parent figures. They should know those signs, minimal. Every college professor, every teacher in high school, every coach, every trainer, they should take this training because it's so important. I've taken it probably 20 times from different people. You can't take it enough to recognize those signs. And they are who the kids are seeing first. So yes, if there's an opportunity where an organization can come in, QPR is actually owned by Mental Health of America. They follow a very strict presentation and format. Each trainer will adopt it to maybe their story. Mine's like a mini version, but not really. I think everybody should take some kind of suicide prevention training or QPR. Yes, sir.
I've been a big fan of mental health first aid. And when I took that course, one of the first things that I was trying to do was to understand, when you have a case of suicide ideation, what do I, particularly in my role as a chaplain in Scouts of America, how do I respond to that? And develop regular, you know how. So we started learning about it, and one of the things that came out of that course was actually two things. Number one is, once you get past the assessment and approach phase, in the allergy model, L says, listen, non-judgmentally. And that's become a very powerful statement just made up front. But once you start to think about it, you set aside any of the notions you're focused on what that person is saying back to you. And I also found out one other statistic, which was a little bit frightening to me personally, because they said, when a young person is having a struggle, they will seek out the oldest person in the room. And my instructor looked directly at me, and I said, okay, I will just let my hair go. But the point simply is, you don't know when this is coming. And as we work through in other disclosure sessions, we don't know when something's coming, so you have to be constantly prepared. And to your point about the three questions, I look at it a little bit differently because I have a first aid training. When I look at it and I have answers to yes on all three of those questions that you asked, are you going to commit suicide? Have you thought about it? Do you have a plan? Do you have what you need to execute your plan? In my brain, that's a CPR case for mental health. I am not leaving them until I am looking.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that the non-judgmental tone is really important too. Again, you want to set that safe space and become a really good listener.
That takes practice all the way through, from your body language to your facial expressions to everything.
Mm-hmm. It is hard not to respond, especially hard not to respond when somebody is struggling. Allowing silence enables them to open up more. So becoming a good listener it takes practice. It really does. And they're not looking for advice so much. And I can't give it to them because I'm not a professional. All I can do is try to keep them safe until I can get them a professional. Yes, ma'am.
So the Montgomery County Children's Collaborative, we have a suicide prevention awareness project. Hearing you talk about athletes, I'm wondering if you've had any success with like rec teams or little leagues and starting to get this type of information. We're always just going to look for new ways to learn information and make support our kids. Do you have any success with?
So we haven't worked with young children like that. I do know that our PPR trainer has trained coaches that coach young kids like that. Again, it's a different kind of training to speak at that level so that they understand, but to educate the coaches what signs to look for. And again, not to give these kids so much pressure at a young age, just to have fun. And yes, teach them the skills. And you can be competitive and still be a good listener and be there when they come to you for problems. You don't know what's going on in somebody's life, especially with kids. And it can come out in so many different ways, whether it's bullying or, closing in on themselves or depression or anxiety or acting out. Just providing that safe space for them to come talk to you and allowing them to talk. Otherwise, I don't know, I don't have any advice with regards to juveniles, to young kids. I do know that NAMI has a great list of resources in there around the country. We have resources on our website, specifically that you can do research around that age group. I just don't know what those are myself. Sorry. Yeah.
I'm gonna suggest that will age of the context. It's all about usually work that and work with coaches that we're working on
So Will and Angel, if you want to come up afterwards and put your resources or your contact information down, for anybody who's interested more about that question, they can get in touch with you. Is that okay?
What was the question?
Put you on the spot. Yes. Yes, sir.
What was the question?
Oh, sorry. She had recommended Will and Angel, who are local in the Parks and Rec and deal more with younger children, that they might be able to help that age group having those conversations.
Yeah, sorry. I recognize speaking to some of our local folks in the room, Anna Ledgerton with Buncombe County Justice Services Department, and my colleague Will Baxter here, our Community Safety Development Mission Coordinator, has been engaged as a coach and rep mentor for a long time, and through our community violence prevention work, has been building up what it looks like to bring coaches together to talk about trauma and supporting kids in a trauma informed way. So I think that this would be a natural connection to build on. And I'm just flagging our JCPC member and Parks and Recreation Specialist Angel as connected with all of our Parks and Rec programs.
Great. Thank you.
Yes.
I have a two-part question. So for the chapters that have been founded, so far, what has been your most successful desired outcome of founding these, and what has been an unexpected outcome that you've seen happen when you started this?
I guess my biggest surprise that has just been the greatest joy has been at Denison University. Granted, that's where Sean went to school, and that's where we had passionate, friends that wanted to engage in this and started this. But he died in 2018. His friends have long graduated. And to hear from current students saying, oh yeah, the Angel Versary Walk's coming up. Yeah, we're definitely doing that. That's what we always do. That is tradition. And for that to be a tradition on campus, that's amazing. Very unexpected. I wish that passion would go to every college, because it's not driven by me, it's driven by the students. And so they definitely want to make a change. So that's been a huge joy. So that was unexpected and happy. So,
What's been the biggest
I've been really happy with our curriculum. The kids have embraced it and run with it. So we not only come up with the different lessons, but we've attached activities with them, and they've really taken it on themselves. They decide which activity and which lesson they're going to do every other week when they meet, depending on who's in the audience. Are they athletes or non-athletes? Do they want to discuss something in particular? There's a huge list that they can pick from. And the leaders of the chapter will take note of who's coming to the meetings and tailor the lesson to that group. And that's been a really nice surprise. Does anybody know of any other college groups like this that exist? I think there are a number of nonprofits that do things on campus, but we're trying to go deeper and have those peer-to-peer discussions really touch on a lot of different subjects. So if anybody knows of somebody going off to college, or they know somebody in college that might be interested, they can just go to our website and we would love to talk to them. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.